Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram user. This is FOBO Fuego here with another episode of Burning the Salt. And first off, before I go into the topics at hand, I want to say a few things that happened over the weekend. One, the Houston Astros defeated the New York Yankees in a very stressful Game 7. We're now heading to the World Series. So when I listen to this later down the line, I'll be like, oh my god, I can't believe it's been that long. It's been a long time since I did a podcast in the future. But speaking of long times, that same day was my 10-year high school reunion. And I got to see some old friends and colleagues from the past. Not everybody was there, unfortunately, which I wish I would have seen everybody. But in any case, I was happy to see you guys. Thank you for remembering me, at least what I look like. If you forgot my name, it's okay. But I'm just glad I was able to see you guys again, and I'm glad that everyone's doing all right. So with that being said, let's go ahead to do our topics, or our topic at hand. A few months ago, there was an issue that happened. Actually, it happened back in April. Now that I realize that what happened during the tournament, or actually, the tournament was about to happen. Okay, and it was for, I believe, it was for ATX, the DreamHack Austin event this year, 2017. And I usually don't talk about this game, okay? But I'm talking about it because it deals with an issue that I had with another game. Probably the only time I'm ever going to mention this is with the Street Fighter game. Now, it's not Street Fighter 5. It was for Street Fighter Third Strike that I had to talk to one of the guys organizing in Houston, Jesse Lozano, about the game. But I'm gonna get to that in a minute. The issue is that I'm gonna read the article to you, and it's from Kotaku, and it's under the name "Smash God drops out of tournament because of his controller isn't properly malfunctioning." Now, I did not read that wrong. I read that correctly. A very strong player, which I had the pleasure of meeting. He actually went to one of the Game Guys events. Actually, the only Smash event that was actually a big turnout, a huge turnout. But they showed up and he was doing really good. And the player's name is Armada. Okay, he's considered one of the 5 gods of Super Smash Bros. Melee. Smash Bros. Melee is a series from Nintendo that allows mainstay characters from each game, properties, and some guest characters to play around in a sort of, not in a fighting environment. You cannot deplete their health, but the object of the game is you have to knock them off of a platform. And since then, people have started making this game more and more popular, and the game has been nearly out for I want to say 20 years, almost already 20 years, which is almost it's a very long time. But that's not the point. The point is this, okay? It says Adam Armada Lindgren, considered one of the 5 gods of competitive Super Smash Bros. Melee, has dropped out of this weekend's DreamHack Austin due to a controller that isn't malfunctioning properly. Now, I'm going to read the tweet that came out from the sponsor. I believe it's for Armada. And it says, announcement regarding Armada at DreamHack ATX 17. Armada won't be compete in a DreamHack Austin 2017 Super Smash Bros. Melee singles tournament due to technical issues with his controller. We apologize to fans and partners who have been looking forward to seeing Armada compete today, and we hope you will continue to cheer on Android, who is still participating in Super Smash Bros. Sequel. Okay, so that's from the actual source. I guess the people that are sponsoring him. Excuse me, it's late at night right now. And continuing the article, it says the obvious question here is why is a professional player with the resources of an organization behind him isn't prepared with multiple backups in case of failures like this. The answer isn't completely satisfactory, but it is fascinating. In keeping with Melee's legacy or pushing an old game at every corner, some Melee players opt to use controllers that are technically malfunctioning in order to execute otherwise impossible moves on a standard controller. Now, this was posted in 2017, so I guess now I know what the game's age is now, because it says, since Melee is a 16-year-old game for the Nintendo GameCube, there is no possibility for patching out certain bugs or exploits, so controllers have been one method for pros to consistently execute certain moves. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Here is how tech data enthusiasts who go by Sidanum Cardano explain on Twitter. There's a bug in Melee that only technically malfunctioning controllers can avoid. The malfunctioning is rare, volatile, and causes other issues. Due to malfunctioning being a necessary criterion, as long as they don't employ Magus Smash turn fix code, only about 1 to 3%, I don't know what the hell that is, of GCCs are viable for players like Armada and V2 King, since how few have said malfunctioning POD to a sufficient degree. So apparently there's like a code that's on there that's been messing up and has been exploited for a number of years, but nobody was aware of it until much later in tournament play. Okay, so continuing the article, it says the amount of type of POD can change any time. So at the moment, the competitively best GCCs are inherently unreliable. The only way around this is either employing Magus Smash turn fix code or using controllers with digital buttons to dash / analyzer chips. In layman's terms, certain inputs that players like Lindgren use only possible through the use of a controller that is technically malfunctioning in a specific way. So basically, because of the hardware that you're using, like your regular controller is messing up, it's started to mess up. It started to reach a certain point to where it could do things that it was not supposed to do, and the bug in Melee actually allows you to do it. Okay, for example, a dash back or backdash, depending on your jargon, occurs when a player inputs a dash backwards from a standing animation. It's a very useful move in competitive Smash, but executing that input consistently can be difficult if your controller has excessive snapback when analog sticks vibrate slightly after moving from the outer position to a neutral position in the center. Players will run controllers through tests, ranking them on their ability to consistently execute dash backs. Alright, let me read that again. Ranking them on their ability to consistently execute dashbacks in order to find a controller that will suit their needs. As Cardano goes on to say, it's difficult to find a controller malfunctioning in a specifically necessary way. Lindgren would have had to purchase a roughly 50 controllers to find out what would fit his criteria. Despite this, there were several competitors on site who have had the equipment as well. There's no shortage of talent in Austin this weekend, and even one should be bound to have a controller that fits Lindgren's parameters, right? Apparently, this is an issue Lindgren has been aware of for the last week. Now, I'm reading a tweet from Adam Lindgren, which is Armada himself, the player that dropped out. And I'm reading his tweet, and it says, "We'll be honest, if I can't find a controller in Austin that's good for me, I might have to skip singles at DreamHack." And that was on April 21st, 2017. Still, Lindgren says he is mad about having to drop out of singles in DreamHack. And will still be around to field test controllers for use in his upcoming tournaments. So basically, because of his controller his controller was already messing up, which was already known, but it's not messing up properly, which is kind of like you don't really want that to happen. It's like your car is messing up, but then you still want it to run, and you don't want it to go until it starts breaking down. Correct? So basically what he's doing is he's roughly going through controllers to find what right parameters will fit his needs So you basically go through a lot of stuff right there. Though the mechanics of the reason why pros use these controllers is fascinating, and it says in quotes, if you dig the technical aspects, I highly recommend Melee on Me's Guide to Controller Quality, end quote. It seems strange that there isn't a more readily available option for Lindgrens to get a controller or servo that's up to snuff. Though there are several sites that sell professional player-centric controllers and mods, they seemingly didn't work for Lindgren, and he was forced to drop out. Okay. So basically, the point of the issue is that the guy had to drop out due to his controller messing up the wrong way. And the way that it's working is whenever you start doing things that your controller's not doing, the majority of the time you want it to do what you want it to do. In my case, my arcade sticks have malfunctioned in some way or form, whether it being a cable, luckily it was through a cable or a connection issue, and just replacing it has been working fine. Never have I ever played a game with a controller that was messing up help benefit me winning a match. So it's like me playing playing a tournament with my game, and I put some parts into my arcade stick. Nothing to where it be unfair or anything. Like, I don't cheat, but you can't customize your arcade sticks to what you want. Like, for example, on the controller, on the arcade stick itself, naturally, when you do the movements in a regular arcade stick, you have 4 corners that you can hit. Now, you could change it to whether it be a octagate, which is 8 sides on a controller, which will be a lot easier to move around completely, or you could change it to a circular gate, which is basically a very easy way to go around the entire stick without hitting any corners in one smooth motion. Preferably, I use the octagate. Now, it's like if me saying my octagate is not working properly because, one, I accidentally added another side to the stick, to the gate itself. If I hit it too hard, and as for somehow made like a 9-way gate, or whenever I do a motion called the SPD, which is you start from the down back position and then you rotate it to an upright position. It's like if that one extra side that I accidentally added to it made me hit that command a lot quicker, and that's unfair, right? But and then after time using it over again, that piece eventually gets to the point to where it messes up the stick itself, the actual metal portion of it, or the rubber guard that's there hitting the sides. And I don't have another rubber guard, and I gotta say, I gotta try and find another one, get it replaced, and that takes a little bit of time to take off and replace, and I would have to drop out, right? I've always been the kind of player to actually have to make sure my arcade sticks are working properly before I take it for tournament. Now, in the such case where it does messes up, I take another controller. I have a certain layout that I like to have on my arcade sticks, and it's the I believe it's the Ori layout. If you look at the buttons that are standard, it starts from like a slanted position, and then the rest of the buttons go in a straight line. Where the Ori, it does like on all 8 of those buttons, it does like an arc to make it look, to make it more comfortable with your fingers. Things like that, they're not illegal. They're to the player's preference, and you're staying within the parameters to compete. If players think that your controller is unfair, which is bound to happen, if you're not sure, they'll have a tournament organizer go up to your controller and they'll inspect it for you. They look at everything, making sure there's no macro switches, which is buttons that'll make it hit the buttons faster, or things that'll actually cause it to crash the game, things that'll actually help you cheat, and which is fine. That's all. That's if that's your event, you have to be the one to make sure that it runs smoothly. Perfectly fine with that. So going back to to the Smash controller issue. The GameCube controllers are the purple controllers. If you ever seen it in your life, they're just purple controllers. Weirdly shaped, and if you really think about it, it was made for casual use only. It was never meant to be used for tournament play. Back then, there wasn't really a whole lot of Smash Brothers tournaments because, you know, the way that the rules were still young, they didn't know how to set things up. So, I never played Smash. I had cousins that played it, but not to the competitive level. And my brother actually used to play Smash, but he never got to that level either. He just liked playing it for fun. And so, looking back at it, my brother has one of those controllers, or I might have it, I'm not sure. One of us has the controller. But there's an issue with the controller where on the directional pad, which is the analog, which is a gray stick that you use your thumb to roll it around, there's a technique to where in Melee, you'll flick the stick, and then whenever it goes back and forth, the spring inside of the stick is basically the malfunction of the issue. And I read this from another article that it allows you to, whenever you're trying to defend your not defend yourself, but like when you're trying to move around, it'll actually allow you to reach that exploit that the game was talking about. But you can only do that when the controller has been worn out. You can't really modify the spring or the rubber on it because those controllers were not designed to be beaten up in that manner. And I find it funny that they're beaten up in that manner because of a few things. I've seen videos on YouTube where people, whenever they lose, okay, if you're new to this community or podcast, all right, I just want you to look at this one video. Go on YouTube and look up, or actually type in salty smash moments, okay? And when you type that in, you're gonna see a whole plethora of videos and compilations of basically kids getting angry or upset at the game. But the result is something that I'm surprised that it happens more and more, because yes, it does happen in the fighting game community every once in a while, but you see this happen a lot more in the Smash community, okay? Basically what happens is when people start losing a match, or when they lose, or they get frustrated, they get upset, they get mad, and they start raging really hard. And then out of nowhere, you actually see them grab their controller, grab it by the cord, and start swinging it to the ground. I've seen players smash their controllers on the floor, throw it to the walls, throw it in the trash, stepping on them, beating the crap out of those controllers. And it's hilarious sometimes because, you know, I'm thinking, man, that's a lot of controllers that are being broken. But then it rose into another question. Just like the GameCube systems themselves, a lot of the stuff, of those things are starting to become a little bit more obsolete and a little bit harder to come by. The controllers are just as hard to find. So I basically have a Smash. I don't have the game Smash, but I do have the controller, which is a black controller, and the GameCube. And what's funny is that I never connected it once to play it because my brother gave it to me, a friend of his gave it to him. So I just have it. Now it's not collecting dust. I just have it put up where I don't have games for it. I'm not sure if I have the cables for it, but if I do, I've been wanting to actually play it because I've always wanted a GameCube and I never got to play it. But the point is that it's a lot of players keep destroying their controllers. And now that I see that the controllers are being mishandled or destroyed, you can't find most of those controllers anymore that are actually within regulation, and I use that in quotations, to the tournaments. So what happens when you lose all of those controllers? Eventually, the tournament scene for that game will start to die out, and people are going to move on to other things. That's almost pretty much a given. But there's another issue. The controllers themselves are very awkwardly designed. It has been known that they cause wrist problems and carpal tunnel to some of the Smash players that have been dealing with the odd shape of the controller. So you would think that because of the games are like trying to use, like, you know, like, for example, no one thought that a first-person shooter was going to be so much fun with another person, right? Now this was the case for a game called 007 for the Nintendo 64. But that controller was even more of a colossal mess up, because that controller was a weird shape. It was like a boomerang. But it got to the point to where people started playing that game a lot more often, and people wanted to run tournaments. And people have complained like the wrist hurts, or on the thumbstick for that controller was notorious for being like so dull that it can literally tore your skin off on the palm of your hand or on your thumb. Like, it causes blisters because the amount of rubbing you have to do to the controller. And for some reason, Nintendo came out with weird designs after the Nintendo 64, and then going into the GameCube. Now, luckily, the Wii made it more lenient to where it's actually a flat, like kind of like a regular controller back in the day, but it was less buttons than those other two controllers. And people got upset whenever they released Super Smash Bros. Brawl for the Wii that they couldn't use their regular GameCube controllers. Nintendo had already built in controller support so people could connect their GameCube controllers to the Wii, but people still kept using those purple controllers. Now, as of now, those controllers have been dying out. The original ones, back from 16 years ago. Whenever, I believe it was last year or 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, 2015, when Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U came out. They actually did a small reproduction of the original GameCube controllers. So they made new old controllers for a limited run so people could play Smash, but for the newer game. And people were complaining about those controllers because even though it was same in design, they were not made with the same parts. Those controllers that were made with better parts than what they were back in 16 years ago. And the people were like, oh, I don't like the controller, it doesn't feel right, it's not authentic, even though Nintendo made the controller better and not hurt other people, even though the controller's a very bad design, to be honest. It was made for small casual play, not for tournament, right? And so players started to mod their controllers. They would take apart the controller, and they would actually cut into the rubber underneath the thumb pads to where they had little notches, or made it easier to do. There's some really technical jargon that people have been doing, but I'm not really going to get into that. But they've been modding those controllers to try and make it work to their advantage. All of the controllers are dying out. All of the controllers are being destroyed. So what happens if the controllers are gone? Well, a company that is known as HitBox, okay, came out with the idea of they had a project that they were going to be doing for the Smash community, and they've been getting some players, just, they've been talking to players, and they've been asking a lot of questions. How would it feel if you had a box to play Super Smash Brothers? and the idea has been floating around for a while. But people thought, people actually have modded their arcade sticks to play Smash, which is kind of an impressive thing to do, because even though on one stick you only have 4 directions to use, and with a combination of those directions, that's all you have. That game uses at least 2 thumbsticks and a D-pad. So that guy already had like a hard time with it to do anything, like, because he set himself at a limit. He just wanted to be able to play the game with a stick. So the company HitBox decided to try and bridge that gap to see if they could actually help out the Smash Brothers community. So they came out with a thing called the Smash Box, and it looks pretty neat. Think of it like this. You know how you have an arcade stick, the stick's sticking straight up in the air, and you have 8 buttons and then a start and select on the side of it, correct? Now, imagine a stick without the stick, alright? A box with 4 directional buttons, okay? And then 4 directional buttons for the D-pad. And then 4 directional buttons for the C-stick. And then I believe it's 8 buttons for the button actual layout, which is the main 4 where your right thumb is resting at, and then the top 4 buttons that are on top of the shoulders of the GameCube controller. Okay, now it seems like a mess, and I'm gonna be posting the picture, that way you guys can see it and to see what it looks like, because honestly, by design, it looks actually pretty cool. And a lot of people were like, they were in for the idea. It actually had a Kickstarter and everything to fund the idea, because they made one, and they had a player learn Smash through the Smash Box. And honestly, it's something that can help bring in new people into a game that's already been out for more than 16 years. This is where the issue lies now. I'll read another article from SRK, which is the fighting game community, place where you actually get your news and updates and everything. And they actually made a quick article not too long ago. Today's the 23rd, so it was made on the 17th. I saw it a few days ago, and that's what caused me to do this podcast. And the title says, Opinion: The Smash Box ban does not have Smash best interests in mind. This thing has been barely out already, and it's already being banned at tournaments, okay? So I'm going to continue to read the article. The Super Smash Bros. Melee community and tournament organizers and rules committee that accommodate them have drawn yet another line in the sand with regards to the Smash Box versus GameCube controller battle. Reports came in during the Big House. Players were informed that if they had a box in their bags, they were not allowed to bring them out at any point in time. Failure to do so could have resulted in their expulsion from their event altogether, and with people being threatened with having security called on them due to non-compliance. Security for events are typically reserved for serious issues such as violence or threats thereof, sexual assaults, and being under the influence of drugs or alcohol. All of these will certainly warrant the use of security. However, to threaten the use of security over the use of a controller, even in friendlies, which friendlies mean casual play, nothing's on the line, just for fun, that is controversial and is taking the boxes versus GameCube controller debate much too far. To quote John Stossel, quote, "Give me a break," end quote. While rumors abound that Nintendo sponsorship of the event was behind this, no official statement from the company has been made. Further, if this were an issue of licensed GameCube controllers versus unlicensed controllers, wouldn't this have also extended to the knockoff GameCube controllers that are abundant these days? These would have made the culling process insanely tedious which makes me question Nintendo's involvement in this altogether. Further customized controllers would have also had to fall into this ban, as well as ones that have been modified. So basically, people thought that Nintendo is behind this, that is enforcing this ban, or actually gave the idea of this ban. But if they were to actually think that Nintendo were responsible, Nintendo has to also realize that other people that use their other controllers, that's a good chunk of them. So people don't use the original Melee controllers or the Wii U edition ones. A lot of players use custom controllers made by Afterglow or other controller brand companies. I can't really think of any other ones besides Afterglow, but it's just basically their version of a GameCube controller. Same design, just different layout, different positions of the stick. Now, it's weird because the Smash community is very, very weird on their controller settings and the way that they're keeping things legit and true to itself. Even though what they've added to themselves is making it harder for the people to get in. So I'm gonna continue this, okay? Next column says, as Keegan Interrobang Spindler wrote in August, when the Smash Unified Rule Set banned boxes, the war on boxes have been primarily waged by the tournament organizers themselves. Most notably, Aryan Crimson Blur Fati. These names are hard to read sometimes. These are like weird white people. And the tournament organizer for the Big House himself, Jungle Guy. These controllers, which were primarily created to avoid the hand injury issues which have sidelined several players at times, most notably forcing Aziz Hacks Al-Yami into retirement. See, I was able to read that one fine. Have created one of the most divisive arguments in any competitive scene, and beyond the psychological issues surrounding the GameCube controllers, which has been given its fair share of coverage, there are many other issues as why the war on boxes has gone overboard and must be rescinded. So now I'm going to read a tweet from that same, I think it's from the same person, but his name is Mike Mummy Murphy, as in Muscle Murphy. And I quote, "You can't say we are not an elitist community and then turn around and kick out players for using controllers that are saving their hands." End quote. Now, we're going to go back into the article, and it says HitBox Revisited. So, the HitBox itself is not new, okay? It's been out for a long time, for a good while. And I have one that was personally made by my good friend Angel. He made me one for, because he needed design ideas for arcade sticks to be made. So he made me one. But what's cool is that I was able to use it in fighting games, and it's fun. It's actually pretty fun, and it actually helps me play games I haven't played in the past. A new way to actually get me interested in playing. So, but let's go back to the article. It says, HitBox Revisited. In 2011, the fighting game community began a similar debate with the creation of a controller that has become increasingly prevalent at events, the HitBox. This all-button controller, which allowed players to control movement with the fingers rested on the buttons like a computer keyboard, making movement easier, was at first met with a curiosity. Then later, resistance due to issues were found with the HitBox itself. The first major issue discovered by pressing simultaneous opposing cardinal directions, example, left and right, which is two buttons, if you keep hitting them together one after another really quickly, you could block both directions at the same time in a myriad of games, or even allow charge characters to hold charge while walking forward in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. This was quickly addressed within the community by creating circuit boards and firmware for existing community boards that contained built-in SOCD cleaners which prevented these issues, and Marcus Toodles post creating an SOCD cleaner board for circuit boards that didn't have it built in and couldn't be flashed with new firmware. It is also worth noting that the SOCD issue is still prevalent with basic controllers by using the directional pad and analog stick simultaneously. Now, basically, people were considering saying that this is not fair because in some games, which back then they didn't have games that were able to do. They didn't have these controllers back in the day, like way back, like back in Super Nintendo. The controllers themselves were mostly directional pad and 4 buttons and then the 2 shoulder buttons on top, a regular Super Nintendo controller. So if you were able to create this box or buy the box and get the adapter to work with the console or with the game, you could actually do some funny things with it. Basically, you could press and hold back, like for a charged character on an arcade stick, you press and hold back and then you immediately press forward and then an attack button, and then whether direction you do or button strength you do, either a fireball or a quick rising anti-air, which is like a flash kick, would happen to, that would work on stick. Now with stick, you cannot hit both sides at the same time because the stick is designed to hit one side only, which is fine, right? That's how you're supposed to play it. The hitbox though allowed you to, and this is only for the Super Nintendo, for Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, you can press and hold back, and then if you press the other button, which is forward, you can still charge the back button as you're pressing the forward button, and you will continue to keep I call that cooking. So you're continually cooking the charge while you're walking forward, and then you can do a combo and then immediately cancel like a normal into that special move, which is basically not really possible. Like, if you really think about it, you could do it regularly, but you have to do it within a combo. This one allows you to actually have it cooking already and then start the combo and then add that element to what you're doing. So it was unfair, so they decided to make firmware, which is like updates for the hardware, so that way they wouldn't happen anymore. And so people in the community were doing something about it to prevent these issues, which is not bad. Now, it still exists to this day because if you really look at it, on your current PlayStation 4 or Xbox One controllers, you have a directional pad and an analog stick. Alright, and I've done this before. With Street Fighter 4 because there's do on my arcade stick that I cannot do on the PS4. So what I figured out is, since I use the directional pad for the movement, I would start the combo, and then whenever I would do like a really hard cancel, which is like for Street Fighter 4, the example would be crouching medium kick into fireball, and I would do FADC cancel, which is a dash cancel, which eats up 2 meters. But as I do the dash, I would use the directional pad, which is the thumb buttons. Press forward twice, and then as I'm going forward, I would quickly switch to the analog stick to do the ultra combination, which is basically like the super, and it would work. And to me, I thought, okay, so since it's on the controller, it should be tournament legal, and it's an issue that really can't be fixed because Sony or Microsoft continue to do updates. That way, the firmware that you add to those controllers don't really work. So there's constant maintenance that you're doing. So they were trying to fix the issue, but to this day, it still exists. Alright, now back to the article. While this was enough to initially satiate the detractors from the new technology, more resistance came in later 2012. Most notably from well-known Tekken and Soul Calibur player Aris Bactanians. I think it's it's Aris, the puddle guy, drawing criticisms of its ease inputs more so than an arcade stick or stock system controller provides. He took particular note that most players in the Tekken series could possibly perform just frame shining wizard kicks, a move which is required 3 forward inputs before pressing left kick, and something that could be easily done on a hitbox by running your ring, middle, and index finger across to the left or right button in a quick succession. With that, there was fear that players would rapidly adapt to the hitbox and gain an advantage over arcade stick and pad stalwarts, forcing top players to join the ranks of hitbox players or to be left on the sidelines. But there's a problem. Neither has happened. The only real high-profile adoptees within the community lately have been Ryan Gutierrez and Ultra David Graham. The former has only really been using the hitbox on E-League soon after he switched. We saw him finish with a 0-7 record in pool play. The latter is notably not on the tournament circuit anymore, and only switched to be able to continue to play due to wrist issues. A problem not too unfamiliar to Melee players. Further, should you look through tournament results and find majors won by hitbox players, you're not going to be waiting for a while. That has barely happened, if at all. While Nick Tanilla, they put the name together, has done well in local events using this device, most players using hitboxes have yet to truly crack open the field, despite an inferred advantage in ease of inputs. There may have been instances in Mortal Kombat players also doing well on the device due to instant air moves being easier. However, the point still stands that the overall balance has never shifted to the hitbox being dominant. Okay, so now it would have been a huge issue if people continued to be winning with these controllers due to easy inputs. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened. So after a while, people were starting to be like, okay, it was considered a way of being like, okay, this is gonna happen now. Since nobody's been winning with these controllers, there's really no issue with it. So continuing the article, it says, Boxes versus Hitbox versus GameCube controllers, the dreaded WWE Triple Threat match. The FGC concluded that despite the ease of inputs, the Hitbox offered no noticeable advantages over any other recognized method of input in the scene worn of band. With no macros or rapid-fire options on the device, and with being visually apparent if the players have circumvented SOCD cleaners on them, even if a person were to try to circumvent this, most modern titles have been programmed with SOCDs in mind, blocking them from within the code itself. The hitbox has universally been recognized as tournament legal in input methods for many years now. Boxes, on the other hand, have been automatically been labeled as unfair use by the Smash Bros community and shoved to the wayside almost unilaterally since their invention. While the ease of inputs of the hitbox have influenced the decision, given the similarities with the boxes, traditional fighting games platform fighters such as the Smash series are so vastly different, such a conjecture is a knee-jerk and baseless assumption. There have been times where the Smash community has chimed in the support of boxes as a valid input option. In December, Daniel Tafokins Lee, I'm sorry, these are very crappy names. Daniel Lee, I'm calling that, explored the issue on Yahoo Esports Melee Science, stating that he saw no performance difference between the Smashbox and a GameCube controller, even going so as far as to say that using a Smashbox makes certain things, such as tilts and slight directional influences, more difficult to perform. By taking devices that were mainly needed to avoid physical issues in regards to the GameCube controller and making it about non-existent ease of inputs, the Smash Bros. Committee have not only missed the point, but they have begun to make fools of themselves. This debate, or lack thereof, has begun to look less like they're protecting the integrity of the game and more like a group of 5 elite saying, stop liking things that I don't like. There couldn't be more vivid outsider's description of their stance than the strong arm tactics portrayed by the Big House. So it's getting to the point to where even though the FGC has said, the fighting game community have said there's no switches on there to make the characters quicker, there's no ways to make things unfair. If anything, it makes it harder to do certain commands, and it takes years of practice. If you can do it, you can do it. You have to put in the work. So basically they're saying, if you can do it, fine, do it, if you put in the work. But you have to reach within the guidelines of our tournament rules, and people were okay with that, which is fine. So with that happening, a lot less issues happen with wrist injuries, because a lot of the players that are playing competitive games right now, they're pretty much in their 30s already. So after a while, your wrist starts to hurt, and a lot of these guys have been playing games for like almost nearly 20 to 30 years. I myself have been playing games since I was a kid, but I never was in tournament until not 2011, I want to say. And that was it. That was the only time I actually started getting more competitive. But even then, I wasn't playing 5 to 12 hours a day with the arcade stick or a regular controller. I limited my time to play so I could be able to rest. Because there have been times where I have hurt my wrist playing using an arcade stick, and the way that I had to hold the stick itself, like the ball on top of the arcade stick, I've hurt the inside of my ring and my middle finger on my left hand. So I had to change it to a back top, which is a Korean back top style, so I wouldn't be able to do that. But it's easier for me to move. But the community the Smash community itself, they're not really allowing new things to help people continue to play the games that they like. And it's starting to look like as if they want to see these players injure themselves to the point where they can't play anymore, so they can have a chance to be successful at the game. Even though the game itself is basically dead in developer terms, but it's alive in a community of people that continue to want to play this game for a long time. So, continue the article. Further, if they were so concerned that the integrity of the Smash would by using anything but the stock Nintendo GameCube controllers, there are other fish to fry than simply boxes. Kotaku recently reported that the prevalence of modified GameCube controllers, which featured notches cut into the holes where the analog sticks jut out from. Notch cutting makes the shield dropping far easier to execute, which puts into a gray area, where it could create an unfair advantage against players who do not have notches cut into their controllers. If there were a question of integrity in the game, wouldn't this be excluded? If this were a matter of dealing non-licensed peripherals to make nice with Nintendo, who has had difficult to pass in dealing with the competitive melee community, something that I alluded to earlier, wouldn't Chinese knockoff controllers, as bad as they are, be banned as well? Wouldn't the well-accepted Universal Controller fix, which is an unlicensed software fix that corrects issues with backdashing on certain GameCube controllers, also be banned, especially if this were a Nintendo-forced issue? This ban has become something that don't protect Melee's integrity in the slightest, pointing at UCF and saying progress doesn't make this any less true. This is something that only looks like people that are afraid of what's different and not giving it time of day. Imagine if this were to happen in a sport like golf, tennis, baseball, or ice hockey, where players use a variety of brands and styles of equipment to suit their preferences, to negligible performance results compared to their peers. Athletes would riot or boycott ESPN, TSN, and their various counterparts would have a field day with the ongoing debates. Excuse me. The professional sports have not stifled technological advancement, nor should competitive gaming, which is exactly what Smash is doing. So, they're saying, okay, so if the HitBox controllers are such an issue for the Smash community, how come no one's saying anything about players that cut into the analog onto the bottom to make shield moves easier to do? And because, like I said, it's in a gray area. Notch cutting makes shield dropping far easier to execute. Basically, you're in a guard position and then you just let it go, and then if you're having notches in the controller, I guess there's a way to make it easier to make that process even quicker. That's cheating. That's cheating. 101, that is cheating, because you're altering the way that the hardware is by cutting or damaging the controller. Okay? Now, like I said, this falls into a gray area. That goes back to what I was saying about my controller. I've made it to my preference, but I never made it to the point to where it would be unfair. Okay, so that's how I see it. Because if it was unfair, people would tell me you can't do that. You have to change it out, and and I'd be fine. I'll change it out. So, but they're not. Smash Community's not even giving it a chance to be used in tournaments. They're keeping it outside, and it's crappy. It shouldn't even be that way. All right, so continuing. We got a little bit left to go. Yeah, we have a little bit left to go. Got 2 more sections. All right, next part of the article: brand recognition. Let's just say that the report that this ban is Nintendo Force is true. Let's hypothetically say that they were doing this to limit the competitive Smash the Nintendo branded products. Something already nullified by the existence of the UCF itself and Super Majors. What do you gain from it? Unless a port of Super Smash Bros. For Wii U is planned for the Nintendo Switch alongside a licensed Nintendo GameCube to Switch controller adapter and a resupply of GameCube controllers, they stand to gain nothing. GameCube controllers are out of production. By regulating players to only GameCube controllers, Nintendo makes zero money off of this. This is only further compounded by the fact that Super Smash Bros. Melee itself has been out of print for a long time, and not once has Nintendo conclusively hinted a re-release of the title on the Switch. Nintendo gains nothing from the existence of boxes outside of negative press should they fight against it. Why would sponsors have any say in what controllers are used in any fighting game event? At what point has this proceeded to been set? Did Madcast ever do this at any event that they sponsored? Has Kwamba, Razer, or Ori ever forced players only to play on their controllers at events? Has Sanwa ever held a gun to a people's head and forcing them to play only on the JLFs or OBSFs that are standard in nearly every commercial still produced these days? No. And you don't hear any of that. Why? Because players would have a field day. Try telling JDCR, Knee, or any Korean Tekken player with that Korean parts that are not welcome because Sano sponsored an event. Try telling Echo Fox that they only have to cover up the Kwamba logo on their jerseys because Razer sponsors for the Capcom Pro Tour. Try telling John Choi that lugged his giant MAS stick around to EVO to leave in his hotel room because of American parts are banned. The tournament circuit would crumble within only a few events. If something like this were to ever dictated by sponsors, which is why, if, despite what I said above, Nintendo's behind this, they've only further blackened their eyes in their involvement with the community that play their games. So, in our community, we're more lenient on what we can do with our arcade sticks, and not only that, we can use on there. I personally have 2 sticks that I use in tournament, being the Madcat E2 stick and the 8-Arc Ivory stick. The 8-Arc Ivory stick, I recently had a mod done to it where I could use it to connect to any console. But that's it. It doesn't give me any advantage whatsoever to do anything that is unfair because it will be too noticeable. Now, it also has a turbo function on it, but I don't use that because, one, you press a button and that button's going to be pressed, and you will basically show yourself that you're cheating. And it's unfair. Like, imagine if you go to a place, let's just say, right? I'm gonna throw an example out here, okay? Let's just say you have a sponsorship from McDonald's. Okay, McDonald's will say, we're gonna pay for your tournament, we're gonna pay for your stuff, we're gonna make all the things that you're gonna make, but you're only gonna use McDonald's brand items. If McDonald's ever come out with a controller, they want you to use that controller. Okay, because that's their brand. And you go to a tournament sponsored by Burger King. Burger King would not have you there because, one, that's his rival, and they don't want any McDonald's sponsorship on their tournament scene. Now, if it was the FGC, think of it as if McDonald's allowed you to we're going to let you use any controller you want to do, and the controller you want to use is a Burger King brand controller, and they'll tell you, okay, that's fine, you can use that, and you could go play at a Wendy's tournament. Those two comparisons, those like what it is between the Smash community and the fighting game community. We're more lenient on the controllers because, one, we understand what damages our hands, because we don't just play games. We have other jobs. We have other things to do with our hands. We build, we design, we play. Okay? But Smash does not want to hear it. Okay? So continuing the article, which is the last section, it's called The Vicious Cycle. What this ultimately amounts to, a vicious cycle that these new devices developers may never win. They want their devices to be deemed tournament legal. They can't prove them tournament legal until they are given a chance to be showcased in competitive play. And they can't be showcased in competitive play because they are not deemed tournament legal. They aren't deemed tournament legal because a few stalwarts at the top of the competitive circuit are resistant to change. They have every opportunity to give these controllers a chance and see whether they affect the competitive scene. This approach is not unlike of one we traditionally fighting game players utilized when the HitBox came out. While the odds are against the boxes making such a shift that you'll see Mewtwo King, Leffen, Hungrybox, or Armada forced to drop their GameCube controllers for box in order to remain relevant, if that were to happen, all they have to do is institute a ban. If boxes truly did create an unfair advantage enough to affect tournament results such as a dramatic way, the shift would have been quick enough that you could quickly institute the ban without affecting the legacy of Melee much one way or the other. But by blindly banning such instruments, you do affect the legacy of Melee automatically, and it starts to look like a bunch of crotchety old men screaming at boxes to get off their lawns over something far too asinine while players fell off left and right, hand injuries over a controller so unergonomic. That's a long word, and it's weirdly late. It's 1 in the morning. Anyway, that when I showed it, as well as a video of Mewtwo King playing on it, to Toronto chiropractor Catherine Sue, she strongly advised that players either avoid the controller entirely or play no longer than 30 minutes at a time. Okay, I'm gonna pause right there in a minute. I've been to one tournament at Game Guys where they had Smash, and they played for freaking hours on that controller. Hours. This doctor, the chiropractor, says don't even use it, but if you do use it, for 30 minutes, and that's it. I've seen people use it for at least 12 hours of play, and they're just insane. They're destroying their hands slowly but surely. Alright, continuing. Is this the legacy that Melee wants? It looks like from the comments I've seen via Reddit, as well as speaking with people I personally know who are Melee players, the community is starting to say that the ban on boxes is unwarranted. Whether they intend to gravitate toward the devices or not, now it's up to the committee to get in line in the community's voice. Enough is enough. It's time to let the Smash Box and the box have their chances to prove themselves. Now, the committee itself, there's two people in it called Fateh and Jungle Guy. Those are the ones that actually were the ones that made the rule on the boxers ban. So, I had a similar incident happen to me whenever I wanted to go to a Street Fighter Third Strike event, and I talked to right. He was the one at the time helping organize all the Third Strike events, and it could be because of the same reason where this article was saying earlier that the game itself didn't have a SOCD cleaner in it or anything, which could be true because it was an arcade game, and they just, I'm not sure of how they made the port go to the PS3 or to the Xbox 360. I'm not really sure how they did it, but I asked him, he goes, if I were to use a HitBox, can I use it in tournament? And he told me no, and it was unfair. And I was like, well, can you tell me why? And he's like, well, it's easy to do movements, and basically what I just said over this whole podcast. And my argument to him was that, okay, you're putting rules on a game that has been out since 1999. Okay, almost 20 years. I believe the game is already 19 years old already. Next year will be 2017. It's 18 years old right now, and I wanted to get into the game, but now that there's like a ban on, well, not a ban, but that he wouldn't allow it, that gave me this even pursuing to get into Third Strike. It really did. And that was a few years ago because I made a video on YouTube about the Hugo stuff that I did with Third Strike using the HitBox controller. And I'll post a link on the bottom, that way you can take a look at it. It was a few years, it was like maybe like last year or 2 years ago, I'm not quite sure. But the funny thing was that it was, at the time, Third Strike was still healthy in Houston. Fast forward to 2017, there is no Third Strike tournaments whatsoever. They just announced one in Austin, and the players that I'm friends with are not even going over there because they don't have time to go, or they just stopped playing the game altogether. It died. Now, the Third Strike scene in Houston is not like the Smash United scene that is around the country. It's a very huge group, so they do have their people. But it goes on ahead to where, just by me, if I was interested, because I was actually considering getting the Smash box just to play Smash at least once in my life, or learn how to play, because one, it's almost like an arcade stick but without the stick, and it's pretty fun. Imagine playing Smash Brothers on an arcade stick that had to do with total of three sticks. It would be a mess. You really couldn't do anything about it. So what they did was they turned it into buttons with the layout that people could actually use and people could practice. Albeit it's not easy, it's very hard to use, but that's what I would like to call by everyone saying is like, pick your own poison. I've made a video a long time ago, and actually it's one of the first videos I've made for this channel. And I believe it was my very first video for this channel. Actually, it was like back then, it was to help people get into the community or actually get into play fighting games. And it's basically choose your controller. Now, I've been meaning to make a new one because newer designs and new controllers have come out in the past, and I want to be able to inform people what they can use, because there's a lot more controllers that I realized that there were that I could be able to play on. But in any case, this is like this whole debacle of the controller issue with the Melee got me to feel like this game is gonna die a lot sooner than expected, because one, it's not only that the controllers are being like ran out, the controllers are dying, the consoles are dying because people are still using the GameCube's consoles. Those are dying, and the game, you have to use a CRT TV to play on that. If you don't know what a CRT TV is, the TV you used to have when you were a baby, the big box behind it, you have to use those TVs, and even then there has to be specific branded TVs that are quote unquote zero lag and then tournament friendly, and they're huge ass boxes. They're big, which I'm surprised people even played on them at all. Which is kind of like, why would you even have that? There's no point. There's no really a point to you to have anything like that. Now, the Third Strike, they have the same issue because you have to use CRT TVs, and they didn't want to use the tournament legal monitors for today's games. And they started to see they didn't have the luxury of actually having all the TVs that they wanted. They had a chance to where they'd be like, oh, I have all these CRT TVs, but they're huge boxes, and I'm seeing people carrying boxes like 40 to 50 pound boxes with them, and at least 5 trips from their cart just to bring them inside. And you're like, why would you even do that to yourself? You're hurting your back for even playing the game. And that's what Third Strike was going through as well, because they had different size monitors and everything. It was never an organized monitors for anything, and they didn't like it. And to be honest with you, that's why they didn't last very long. They were alive for a good while and then they just died. And it's sad because I wanted to be a part of that. But the way I wanted to be a part of that was with the hitbox. Because there's a thing you can do in Third Strike where you can do a parry, which you have to press a forward motion to, as they're attacking you, you hit forward and you do a parry, and they'll be in recovery a little bit longer, and you can attack them right after you parry. Depending on what attacks that are done, of course, but the majority of the time, if you parry, you could actually switch the momentum and take the round or take the game. But because of the fact that the parry itself is too easy on a hitbox, that's why it's not fair to them. But to me, I'm limiting myself to where I'm used to pressing up to jump, where on the stick, the up button is on the bottom, making it a jump button. So it leaves me no room for error, but I have to be on it the whole time to make sure nothing bad happens. If does bad happen, if something bad does happen, then it's on me. I lose. And that's fine. I'm totally fine with that because that's what I chose. Those controllers, whether it be the hitbox or an arcade stick or a regular pad controller, which is from whatever game console you're playing it on, I like to call those the pick your poison kind of thing, because you're going to lose regardless of what controller you use. Nobody wins forever. Okay? That's already a given. Nobody wins forever. So what I learned from this whole debacle was that the Smash community is dying. And I hate to see a scene die because you could tell they're very dedicated people. They keep things going, and to keep the integrity of the game, I totally get that. But how can you keep an integrity of a game if the resources that you once had 16 years ago is no longer being viable this year? All the CRT TVs are gonna die. A neighbor that's like 2 houses down away from me has a CRT TV outside, and it's been outside since Hurricane Harvey, and that box is still there. It's in the back of the house. Nobody's taking it. It used to be in the front of the house, survived the hurricane, and now it's outside in the backyard. And it's funny because it just rained today in the morning, and it's still out there. And I'm curious because I want to connect it to my power outlet that's connected outside, and I want to see if it works. If that thing works, I'm going to destroy it because there's no reason for these things to be around. There isn't. It's not only that, it's also an issue with those TVs being able to stream off of it because it's such a crappy way of doing it. Because I have the tech to do it now. And even then, back then, it was a little bit hard to come by because nobody wants to be, like, I have to carry so much more cables than I'm supposed to. And it sucks because, like, here's the thing. I streamed an event for my friend. Okay? I'm not gonna say who it is because, I don't want people to dig it up and see what happened. The stream came out in black and white due to the fact that because of the cables that I had and the things that I had, it wasn't gonna be able to work. I did manage to get it to work off of to be able to show it to a to a CRT TV with the connections that I had, but it did not have color. Okay, the stream did not have color, but the players had color, unfortunately. And I was shunned because of the way that the stream came out. Even though I did what I could, streamed it the way that I could get it to the best of my ability, and they're like, okay, well, we're gonna get somebody else to do the stream for the game. They got a guy saying that he was gonna stream Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, and he asked the guy, the streamer, like, can you do it? And the guy told him, yeah, sure, I can do it. And the guy asked on what it's going to be on. He said it's going to be on the current consoles, which was like the PS3 and the Xbox 360. Now the Third Strike community perfectly plays on the 360, PS3 version, shady version, support, I guess. That's what they tell me. But okay, it's your game. You say what you want. Or crappy game. But it turned out that the day of the tournament it was going to be streamed. The guy brought the connections and he thought it was going to be for the PS3 because on the capture card that he has, which is similar to what I have, can only take it can only stream off of regular composite. Now 360 can do composite as well. The issue is that the connections are different to work on the adapter. So I sat behind the whole time watching this guy sweat just like how I did. And they're like, you know what, screw it, we're gonna do it like this, and they eventually figured out how they were gonna do it. The thing did not end up being streamed at all. And then I told my friend, I told him like what happened. He's like, they couldn't stream it. And I told you. He goes, there's the tech that you're trying to broadcast is not gonna be able to do it the way you want it to. We're too far ahead for us we can be able to do it properly. The tech exists, but because it's so rare and it's so like people are making it specifically for that, people are actually making money off of something that's so simple that you can buy at a store. I bought a capture card just for that same reason. I bought it just to prove a point because I've done it in the past, but I've never streamed it, and I have it. I'm looking at it right now, and I'm like, I bought it just to have it with me because, like, for one, I told him like it's possible to do it. It really is, but there's no desire to do it here. Third Strike's not going to be prevalent anymore. Like, it's dead. The people that are playing it, they're like basically gone. They just play it for fun. The people that have been playing the game seriously, which I know for sure, is my good friend Henry, and he's been getting better at the game. But for what he has, he had to get an old style TV, CRT, and play it on that, and he's showing results. So every maybe once a year, he gets to show off what he can do. But prior to that, there was no reason. He even said, he goes like, I play it just to have fun. Now they had a sponsorship, he was like, it really helped them out a lot. But it's really sad to see someone that said saying that it was unfair, like in this case it would be Jesse, saying the controller won't do any good, and then see the community just die out. Right now, CVS2 is the most popular game at UH right now because UH Joe and Eric managed to actually combine their services, where Joe made a stream where he could be able to make the stuff happen, and Eric helping make a converter box to use the controllers. You can use any controller on that box, and it plays on anything, and that's what's keeping the people playing the game. And even though Third Strike could have that same option, they didn't do it. They're not doing it. There's no reason for them to do it. They don't see the reason. They're saying it would be unfair, but people don't see the bigger picture. It's not about being fair anymore, because there's a way to beat some things if within time. But it's not about being fair. It's about keeping your scene alive. I'm not saying cheating to keep it alive is a thing, but if there's other ways of playing the game, I don't see why not looking into it. I support HitBox in their designs to help these new players or players that are suffering from wrist injuries to continue and to play the games passionately. I commend them for that, and it's a badass idea. But it's sad, and pretty soon, without you even knowing it, Smash United is gonna fall, and LA is gonna die, and they don't have anybody else to blame but themselves. So, alright guys, well that's what I wanted to talk about. Thank you for enjoying, thank you for keeping up with me and spending time with me for the last hour and I want to say 15 minutes or 14 minutes. want to say thank you again for watching. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions or have any comments, please put them in the comments below. Or if you have any other topics you want to talk about, let me know. So, I want everyone to take care of themselves, have a good night, and keep on fighting, fighters.